Welcome to the Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Puff. Are we there yet? Do you remember ever saying these words or hearing these words from your children when you're on a vacation or trip going somewhere? When we reflect on these sentiments, we may laugh or think that's really silly. But do we really ever outgrow it? Because I think that part of us that wants to get to the end doesn't necessarily go away. And when it comes to happiness, I think it can keep us from being happy. Over the years, I've gotten many emails or calls or texts from people saying, Dr. Puff, I'm just not sure if I'm doing it right. I am happier, but when will I be happy? Am I there yet? So in today's podcast, I want to talk about the journey towards happiness, because it is a journey that all of us are on. And it is one that we need to find joy in instead of looking for the end result. What can cause us so much pain and suffering on our journey towards happiness is comparing ourselves to others or past experiences that we've had. This, I believe, is one of the greatest things that contribute to our unhappiness, comparing ourselves to others or comparing ourselves to past experiences. We see others doing better than us. We've done better at times than we're doing right now. And when we compare ourselves to these differences, we lose because we're just not doing as well as we want to be, as we expect to be. And because we're not doing as well, we get discouraged, we give up, and often we stop trying. When my son was younger, he really enjoyed playing the cello, and for whatever reason, he was just very good at it. So when he was playing the cello for his Christmas present, I got him tickets to go hear Yo-Yo Ma. And if you don't know who Yo-Yo Ma is, many consider him the greatest celloist in the world. Well, we really enjoyed listening to the concert, and he was magnificent. Now my son didn't do this, but imagine when we got to the concert, if he had compared himself to Yo-Yo Ma. He would have felt inferior, he would have felt the gifts that he had were in many ways stupid, and that he was not a very good cellist. But he didn't do that. He just enjoyed listening to Yo-Yo Ma, and then he went back to playing the cello. And when he got to high school, he stopped playing the cello and instead switched to some other activities at school. He would, throughout the years, periodically pick up the cello and play a little bit, but with time, he knew his skills weren't as good as they had been because he hadn't been practicing. This all should make so much sense, that we don't compare ourselves to other people that are a lot better at it than we are, and two, if we've stopped trying to do something and then we pick it up again, we obviously aren't going to be as good at it at first. We can get back to being good at something, but we're not going to be as good as it as we used to be. But when it comes to happiness, this is what we often do. So many people compare themselves to others or compare themselves to experiences that they had in the past where they were happier. Now, before this podcast ends, I will talk about what we can look forward to as we progress towards higher levels of happiness. But in today's podcast, our main focus is on the journey towards happiness. Because if we're committed and really want to reach higher levels of well-being in our lives, we have to start with these two things. We have to stop comparing ourselves to others, and we have to stop comparing ourselves to previous experiences that we've had, because there'll always be people above us, and we'll often have experiences in our lives that were exquisite that we try to recreate. And what is far better is to focus on the journey towards making our lives go well each and every day. And whether we've been doing this for a day, a week, a month, a year, or a decade, what is crucially important is kindness. Kindness towards ourselves and the efforts that we're putting forth right now. Because it's not kind comparing ourselves to others. Because that's the path of suffering. Other people sometimes do better than us, sometimes a lot better. And often in life, we may have had periods of times where we were doing better. And if we compare ourselves to ourselves or others, we're going to find that this will be the path of suffering, and it's just unkind. A far better way to approach things is to say, okay, today is a new day. How can I do better today? What little steps can I make to live well, to live more present? And with this encouragement, with this kindness, we will get better. It's inevitable. What happens is when we practice something, with time we get better. As long as, again, we don't compare ourselves to others that do better, or if we used to do better, comparing ourselves to when we did better. What we compare ourselves to is yesterday, or maybe 5 minutes ago. It's far more about, am I doing a little bit better today? And what steps can I take to do better? There are many dimensions and aspects to living a happy life. That's why we have over 300 episodes now of the Happiness Podcast. It isn't that it's complex. It's just there's different things that we can do to develop our happiness skills. I remember years ago, one of them that I literally worked on each time I did this activity. I've always enjoyed walking and getting outside, but what I noticed was I was focused on walking and doing the exercise instead of looking and seeing what I was walking by. So I would practice looking. I would look at the plants. I would look at the small creatures and animals that I would see. I would look at the sky. I would look at the people that I would walk by, and I'd really look and see them, and then stop working towards the end result of finishing the walk. Instead, working toward enjoying each step of the walk. Of course, it was hard at first because I wasn't very good at it. I was used to the end results, but I worked at it day after day. Some days were better than others, but with time, it was a skill that I got quite good at, and I began to see life in its richness and fullness when I went on my walks. And I got better. But I did it with kindness. I didn't compare myself to others that could do it so much better than I could. I didn't compare myself to times where I did it better. I just focused on doing it better that day, that moment. And that made it easier. And not having that criticism for not doing it well was so helpful. Being critical of ourselves really isn't helpful. We can learn from things. We can improve. But criticism doesn't get us better. In many ways, it really boils down to creating new habits, happiness habits. We have perhaps 20, 30, 40 years, sometimes 56 years. It depends upon how old we are, of habits in place. And the older we are, the stronger our habits are. When we decide today to start improving our lives and really getting on the journey towards happiness, however long we've been doing what we've been doing, it's going to take us time to unlearn these habits. It's work. It's commitment. But using gentleness, kindness, encouragement is far, far better than criticism or comparing to others or our former selves. That's the path to suffering and giving up. We can get better at any age, in our 80s, in our 90s. We can always improve. It does take work. It does take effort because we have a lot of practice doing other things. But with kindness, with encouragement, with stop comparing ourselves to our former selves or to others, and instead comparing ourselves to perhaps yesterday. And can we do a little bit better today? That's the path. That's the journey towards happiness. And I want to conclude with, what does it look like at the end? There really is no end, but there are things that we'll see when we get closer, things that we can look forward to, things that will begin to arise inside of us. Now you may hear these and not like these, because if we understood them, we would probably be much closer to them. But these are the things that will arise as we get closer towards the end of our journey. The biggest one is a radical acceptance of what is. That's right. A radical acceptance of what is. That is one of the pivotal parts of happiness. It doesn't mean we don't do things to make things better. But when we've done what we can do, there's a deep acceptance for what is, whatever is. Another thing that we'll see is a childlike approach to living. We'll stop having labels. We'll stop comparing ourselves to others, and we'll just see things for what they are, with new eyes, as if we've never seen them before. And there'll be a deep, deep appreciation for what is, and really savoring it as if we've never seen it before and will never see it again. And though there are many other things that will arise in us, one last thing that I'll mention is kindness. Kindness towards ourselves and kindness towards others, because we realize that we are a product of our conditioning. And unless we've been exposed to and practice this happiness conditioning, people are doing their best. It may be not very good in the world's eyes, but ultimately they're doing their best. And we stop judging others. We may pray for them. We may encourage them, but we stop judging them. And we just focus on living well and giving that kindness towards others and towards ourselves. So as we journey towards happiness, it can be a beautiful, wonderful experience, even with the ups and downs. But if we work on this, and if we're kind towards ourselves, and we stop comparing ourselves to others or to our former selves, we'll find that we will get better, and we'll have moments of beauty that will be indescribable. And as we keep working towards our journey towards happiness, what we'll discover is life can truly be a beautiful adventure. Thank you for joining me on the Happiness Podcast. Besides creating this podcast, there are a variety of other things that I do. If you'd like to keep abreast of these activities, and perhaps someday we may be able to meet in person, just go to www.happinesspodcast.org. That's happinesspodcast.org. You can subscribe to my newsletter, and if you do, you'll be emailed a free PDF copy of my meditation book called Reflections on Meditation. And until next time, accept what is, love what is. Do you ever wonder why some companies do so well, grow, and just seem to keep coming up with great ideas and keep expanding, while other companies are permeated with negativity, lawsuits, employee turnover, and just overall unhappiness in the workplace? Whichever corporate camp you find yourself in, or somewhere in between, the key to any company's ongoing success is to invest in and help their employees perform at their peak performance. There are very clear and specific things that people can do to perform well at work and in life in general. This is the focus of my podcast, and it's also the focus of my work. Being at the cutting edge of any market is sustained through investment in training employees how to perform well. But sustained growth and productivity requires specific psychological tools in order to continue to perform at peak levels. This is where I can help. I've been studying peak performance for over 30 years now, helping people all over the world. And there are very specific things that have to be maintained in order to sustain this level of performance. When companies invest in their employees are invested in them. Unfortunately, it's quite common for companies to be doing exceptionally well in the marketplace, but for unknown reasons, key employees make poor choices, leave the company, or start struggling and coping with stress-related illnesses. Companies that do well know their business really well, but human behavior works in mysterious ways unless you've been trained to understand the causes and cures of underperformance. If you're a forward-thinking company, perhaps it's time to think about giving your employees skills that may really help them perform well at work and throughout their lives. If you work for or manage a company, and you're ready to learn the skills in order to survive and thrive in any market, in any conditions, or in life in general, I'd love to help. These are the skills I've learned. These are the ones I'd love to bring to your company. True lasting success has to be seen from a broader perspective, not just monetary. And if you're ready to bring about these changes, that's where I can help. To learn more, go to www.successbeyondyourimaginationcom. That's successbeyondyourimaginationcom. And whether we're at the doorstep of retirement or have many years to go, may we always be growing and be developing our skills not only as successful employees, but as successful human beings.